Everything you think you know about the caveman diet is probably wrong. Walk into any bookstore, scroll through any fitness influencer's page, and you'll find the same story. Our ancestors survived on meat, berries, and nuts, and if we just eat like them, we'll unlock some primal state of perfect health. But here's the problem. There was no single paleo diet. There never was. What ancient humans ate depended on where they lived, what season it was, and how desperate they were. And when scientists actually cracked open the evidence, buried in fossilized teeth, ancient hearths, and the bones of our ancestors themselves, what they found was stranger, more diverse, and far more humbling than any modern diet plan could ever capture. In 2011, a researcher named Amanda Henry at the Max Planck Institute did something remarkably simple but profoundly revealing. She scraped the dental calculus, hardened plaque, off the teeth of Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, some over 100,000 years old. Trapped inside that calcite were microfossils, starch granules, plant fibers, residue from cooked foods. These were not the remains of pure carnivores. These were the teeth of creatures who chewed on wild grains, roasted tubers, and starchy roots long before agriculture was even a concept. The calculus didn't lie. Our ancestors were not meat-obsessed predators. They were extreme omnivores, flexible, adaptive, opportunistic eaters who consumed whatever the landscape offered and whatever they could get their hands on. And if you want to see what that kind of eating actually looks like in practice, you don't need a time machine. You just need to visit the Hadza people of northern Tanzania. They are among the last true hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, living in the woodlands around Lake Eyasi, much as humans have lived for tens of thousands of years. The Hadza eat roughly 600 different species of plants and animals. On any given day, their diet might include tubers dug from hard ground, baobab fruit, wild berries, honey raided from beehives high in the trees, small game, birds, and something most modern paleo enthusiasts would rather not think about, insects. Lots and lots of insects. Termites, beetle larvae, fat white grubs pulled from rotting logs. Entomophagy, the eating of insects, wasn't some exotic novelty for our ancestors. It was a dietary cornerstone. Insects are dense in protein, rich in fat, and available year-round in tropical environments. A handful of termites contains more iron than the same weight of beef. Certain caterpillars rival salmon in omega-3 fatty acids. For millions of years, long before humans could reliably coordinate to bring down large game, insects were one of the most dependable and nutritionally complete sources of calories on the planet. Our squeamishness about eating them is not ancient. It is modern, cultural, and historically unusual.
But perhaps the most transformative moment in the entire history of human eating wasn't what our ancestors found to eat. It was what they did to it before they ate it. In 2004, archaeologist Nama Gorin Inbar and her team published findings from Gesher Banatya Akav, a waterlogged site in northern Israel along the banks of the Jordan River. They found clusters of burned flint, charred seeds, and traces of controlled fire use dating back 780,000 years. Not a wildfire, not an accident. Deliberate, repeated use of fire in the same location. This is among the earliest evidence that our ancestors, likely Homo erectus, were cooking their food. Not eating it raw off the bone, not scavenging cold scraps, but deliberately applying heat to transform what they consumed. And according to biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham, that single innovation changed the trajectory of human evolution more than any stone tool, any spear, or any weapon ever did. In his landmark book, Catching Fire, Wrangham argued that cooking externally broke down the tough fibers and chemical defenses in raw food, effectively pre-digesting it outside the body. This meant our ancestors could extract far more energy from the same amount of food, while spending far less energy chewing and digesting it. Over hundreds of thousands of years, this created an extraordinary evolutionary trade-off. Our guts shrank. Humans have remarkably small intestines compared to other primates of similar size. And our brains grew. The caloric surplus unlocked by cooking literally fueled the expansion of the human brain. In a very real sense, fire didn't just warm us, it made us human. Yet even with cooking, ancient life was no endless feast. The foods our ancestors prized most were not the lean cuts of muscle meat that fill modern grocery stores. They cracked open long bones with heavy stone tools to scoop out marrow, a dense, calorie-rich fat that could mean the difference between survival and starvation on the savannah. Archaeological sites across Africa and Europe are littered with shattered animal bones, split with precision at exactly the points where marrow is thickest. They ate organ meats, liver, kidneys, brain, packed with vitamins and minerals that muscle tissue simply doesn't provide. These were the real superfoods of the ancient world, and almost none of them appear in the modern Western diet. And between these meals, there was often nothing at all. Seasonal starvation was a normal part of life. Humans evolved under conditions of feast and famine, going days without food and then gorging when a hunt succeeded or a fooding season arrived. Our metabolism is still wired for this pattern. The ability to store fat rapidly, the hormonal responses to fasting, the way our bodies shift to burning ketones when glucose runs out. These aren't bugs in human biology. They are features shaped by millions of years of uncertain meals.
Then, roughly 12,000 years ago, everything changed. In the Fertile Crescent, humans began cultivating wheat, barley, and lentils. The agricultural revolution had begun, and with it came the most dramatic shift in human nutrition in our entire evolutionary history. For the first time, populations could settle in one place and produce surplus food. Civilizations rose. But bioarchaeologist Clark Spencer Larson and others have documented what that transition actually did to human bodies. Skeletal remains from early farming communities tell a shocking story. A sudden decline in stature, sometimes by as much as 5 inches compared to their hunter-gatherer predecessors. Teeth riddled with cavities appear for the first time in the archaeological record, a direct consequence of sugar-heavy grain diets attacking enamel. Signs of iron deficiency, scurvy, and infectious disease explode. The switch from hundreds of wild foods to a handful of grain monocultures was, in purely nutritional terms, a catastrophe. Humans traded dietary diversity for caloric security, and their bodies paid the price. And here is the deepest irony of all. Today, we produce more food than at any point in human history. Supermarkets overflow with options. Calories are cheaper and more abundant than our ancestors could have ever imagined. And yet, by many measures, modern humans in industrialized nations are more malnourished in key micronutrients: zinc, magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, fat-soluble vitamins, than hunter-gatherers who lived on wild plants and insects. We solved the problem of hunger and created an entirely new problem of emptiness: food that fills the stomach but starves the body. The story of what ancient humans ate is ultimately a story about how deeply food is woven into what we are: our brains, our guts, our bones, our capacity for civilization itself. But food didn't just build us. Over the centuries, it also began to destroy us in ways our ancestors never could have predicted. If you want to see how that darker chapter unfolded, how the very thing that sustained us became the thing that killed more people than wars, you'll find that story waiting right here.